This video is about DaVinci Resolve and using a keywording workflow in DaVinci Resolve to help with logging and organization. This came about as a result of an article I posted on Pro Video Coalition about DaVinci Resolve being a few steps away from range-based keywording. The range-based keywording is something that will be familiar to people who work in Final Cut Pro 10, and up until now, none of the other NLEs have had a keywording workflow. Resolve has added something called keywording. It's not quite the same as what Final Cut 10 does, but it gets as close as anything else. And I tried to explore this in this article on Pro Video Coalition, and I didn't get to everything I wanted to get to. And after publishing this, I got a couple of emails and comments asking about a few things, so I thought it might help to clarify this keywording workflow in a video, so hence this screen capture, where we'll go over what we did to do the keywording workflow in Resolve, as well as expanding upon a little bit for a couple of things that I've discovered since then. Before we look at this keywording technique in Resolve, I think it's important to look at Final Cut 10 and the original keywording and how Final Cut 10 operates, because it is, in my mind, the sort of the standard bearer for really robust organization that you can do fast and you can do in a really cool way. I have some of my footage here in Final Cut 10. I'm going to open up the keyword editor. And in this case, let's say I know I want to use dump truck. I could go ahead and add a keyword collection for dump truck. And by adding that and hitting return, you can see I get a keyword collection that pops up here under my machinery event. And that's Control 1 on my keyboard. So if I go in here into my browser and I start just skimming through, I can mark an endpoint, out point, and hit Control 1, and I now mark that with dump truck. So it's a really fast, really easy way to be able to do this. Now, if I go back in here and I decide, you know what, I'm going to mark this as my front loader, I can mark an in to an out point or a range selection as Final Cut 10 calls it, and call that front loader. And again, over here, I get my my different keyword collection, my new keyword, the collection that pops up. And I can just go in here and start marking in, out, Control 2. So again, I go here and I mark an end range selection, Control 2. So that's how I can quickly be able to log these particular pieces of clips into keyword collections. And it's only the little bit that I had marked that goes into the keyword collection. A nice thing about this whole technique is I could go in and make a new keyword collection just called machines. And then I could continue to mark ranges and add another keyword for machines that I've already done that for parts of these clips. But by adding another keyword, I can then drop that single clip into multiple different places at once. And how fast this can be for something like Final Cut 10, I'm just going to drag over this and find, okay, there's a mark that in my range selection. That's a machine. And I'm going to mark this one here, in and out. That's a machine, but also a dump truck. And quickly, I have added multiple keywords to ranges of clips in Final Cut Pro 10. Resolve doesn't yet approach this sort of speed and ease of use, but the keywording you can do in Resolve is, I wouldn't say it's getting close, but it is logging at a different level than some of the competitors. Back in Resolve, there's a couple of keyboard shortcuts and just general overall setup things we want to do to make this keywording technique a lot more efficient and a lot faster. Take note of the mark menu. There's an option here to convert in and out to duration marker. That's an important one because that's going to be what when we set our in and out points that we want to utilize and make a marker between in and out points, which is going to be similar to what we do in Final Cut Pro 10 with the range selection. We also want to make note of the modify marker, and I've changed that as well. You can specifically set these up on a custom keyboard. If you go to keyboard customization, you get Resolve's visual keyboard mapper. If I go down here and I want to click all commands because I want to search all commands in Resolve, and I'm just going to search for marker. You can see there is my convert in and out to duration marker. And let's say I want to map that to a key. I'll put that on F1. I can just click that and hit F1 on the keyboard. I then get that mapped to F1 on the keyboard. Once you do that, you can then save your Resolve custom keyboard by your own name because you've got a new mapping here that you can go in and change after that. I'm going to cancel that because I have my own setup already here. Let's discard that one. You can see that I have put convert in and out to duration marker on F1. And though I don't use it much in this technique, the set in and out from duration marker I put on Shift F1. The other thing I want to look at is what I have on F2, and that is the modify marker command. If I look at modify marker, I map that from the Shift M and put that on F2 because I will use those in conjunction with each other really quickly, where I'll mark with F1 and then bring up the modify marker with F2. There's a lot of stuff you can do here to kind of take this to another level. For example, if I look under the mark menu in the keyboard shortcuts here, there's an option for adding markers of different colors. We're going to be standard here with our blue, but you could change keyboard shortcuts to add markers of a lot of different colors as well, depending on how deep into this technique that you want to get. Discard that because I have my keyboard shortcut saved. And I have not brought that up yet. If you notice, if I go back out here, that's the default keyboard customization for DaVinci Resolve. Let me mark that over to my setting, which is Scott. Hit save, close that up. Now I'm ready to go. I know it's my own mapping because when you go under keyboard customization, you can see the one that you have named. Next thing I want to do is take a look under Workspace at the keyword dictionary. Now, the keyword dictionary is a whole bunch of metadata-based keywords that Resolve has defined pre-built into the application. If you notice, these are all capitalized, and there's a whole lot of them for different things, such as two-shot, three-shot, dolly, element, exterior, interior, MOS, all the stuff you might need while you're trying to tag media. Now notice I said tag media because in a sense that's what we're doing, is we're tagging the media with different keywords. But whether you call this keywording or tagging or whatever term you might use, keyword is the word that pops up in Resolve over and over. They did not call it tagging, and there's not a mention of tagging in the interface of Resolve that I've found. So I'm going to call this keywording. Now, the reason I bring this up here is because you can have keywords based on the project or based on the user. And you can import and export these keywords as you have built them, these keyword dictionary. I've kept this stuck on project thus far because when I've used it, it's sort of been on a per project basis. In the case of this project, if I go back here and look through some of this footage that I have, notice that as I drag my mouse over these thumbnails, and I am in my thumbnail view here, the thumbnail is popping up in my source monitor on the left, and there's a reason that's happening. If I go under these three dots here, I have Live Media Preview turned on. This needs to be turned on for this technique to work, like I'm going to show you. If that's turned off, I get nothing. Now, I'm not double-clicking and loading anything in the source monitor because when I do, I get this pop-up here that's showing me recently used clips. Okay, so that's great. I've got all these recently used clips and I can shuffle between them. But when I go back to Live Media Preview, when I scrub over clips in a bin, they are showing up in the source monitor. But when I move my cursor away or I go between clips, the other clips I had double clicked and loaded are showing up because they still live in the source monitor. I've not found a way in Resolve yet to clear out that list of clips. And when I'm doing this technique, I don't like something there distracting me or making me think there's something else in the source monitor. What I really want to do is to scrub over these clips with the Live Media Preview. So if that happens, what I do is quit Resolve and start it back up, or just make sure if I'm doing this technique that I'm starting Resolve from scratch, and then I won't have anything populating that menu under the source monitor. I quit Resolve and brought it back up, and now you can see that my preloaded clip list is gone from the source monitor, so this is nice and blank, which is how I want it for this keywording technique. I'm going to go back into my media bin, and as I scan around here, remember I've got Live Media Preview turned on. You can see I've got a bunch of heavy machinery clips, I've got trucks, I've got bulldozers, I've got some different backhoes and loaders and things like that, and that's what I want to keyword here. What I can do in this case is, let's say I've got bulldozers and I want to add bulldozer as a keyword. Let me go back up to my workspace and go back to the keyword dictionary. You can add keywords into the keyword dictionary here. I've got a search bar at top, but if I click add keyword here at the bottom, I'm going to get this pop-up here, and I'm just going to type in bulldozer. And that added that keyword to my keyword dictionary. If you notice this keyword that I added, there's a little trash can icon because I can delete this if I don't want it anymore, or if I have a misspelling or something like that. But if you notice, these others don't have a delete or a trash can icon, so they can't be deleted. Now, if I want to make use of that keyword bulldozer and add it to my clip, there's a specific way to do this that I like to make it fast and efficient. Now, first of all, I want to go ahead and bring up my my thumbnail icon to make that a lot bigger here. I only see one row of clips now because of the size and resolution of my screen. But if I close up my bin list on the left here, I'll get two of those thumbnails at one time there. Going back to my bulldozers now, here's what makes this technique fast and to work in a more efficient manner when you're doing your keywording. I am now just hovering my mouse over the clips. If I mark an in point by hitting I on my keyboard and then drag down to mark an out point, you can see a couple things have happened. I now have these lines here on my 5749 clip that shows me I marked an in to out. And if you look to the right in my source monitor, you can see there's an in to out marked there. If I drag my mouse over to the source monitor, then that goes away because of my live media preview that I have turned on, and that's okay. I don't want to double click it because then I'll start having clips in this clip list that we talked about. So I'm going to leave this just with live media preview being my option here. So I have marked this in to out point. If I hit F1, I'm going to convert that in and out point into a duration marker. If I then hit F2, I'm going to bring up the markers modify box where I can actually type in data about this. So I'm just going to tab down to where it says keywords. I'm going to start to type bull, B-U, and there's my bulldozer keyword that I had already previously set up in the keyword dictionary. If I hit return, I've accepted that keyword. You can see the token that has been accepted. And I want to get out of that box and accept that. If I hit return or enter, for some reason, Resolve does not accept that. So if I just tab out to the next, which takes me back up to the time entry point, and I hit return, then it accepts that in. So now I have a keyword bulldozer that has been marked for that particular clip. And what I could do now is just go through and start marking bulldozer keywords. If I just mark it here as I drag over this and scrub on this next clip, I can mark an in point to an out point, F1 to set the marker duration, to set the in and out duration into a marker, a duration marker, F2 to modify, tab down. Now you can see as I type text, like I hit V accidentally instead of B, and there are all of my pre-built keywords that would possibly fit what I wanted to type. And so Resolve gives you suggestions to try to speed this process along, but I'm going to hit BU for bulldozer, tab out, hit done, off I go. Now, a couple things that are worth noting here. This thin orange outline that is in my source monitor tells me that that source monitor is what is active. And that's what makes this technique work. Again, as I drag over, even though my mouse is over the thumbnail in the media, when I hit an in and out point, I get that marked both in the thumbnail of the media bin as well as on the source monitor. And you can see as I am actively updating my in and out point from the thumbnail in the bin, that is updating that in and out point there in the source monitor. Now, what I just did here is I clicked this thumbnail in the bin, and you will notice that thin orange line has come over to highlight the media bin. Now, this is very important to note in this keywording technique, because if you accidentally or on purpose, for whatever reason, if you end up highlighting the bin itself, and again, you see it with this little tiny orange outline at the top of this particular bin, this particular part of the window, if for some reason you've highlighted that, when I hit F1 to convert the in and out duration to a marker, it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything, because that only works when you have the source monitor that is the focus of the interface at any particular time. So how do I fix this? Well, I can just go back over and click into the monitor, the source monitor here on the left, hover scrub back over into my, it's hover scrub what they call it? Scrub back over into my bin. And because the highlight is still happening here, it is still focused in the source monitor. As I then drag over this thumbnail, I can hit my F1 to convert the duration, the in and out, to a duration marker, hit F2 to make the modification, go back and type bulldozer, tab out of that, and I've now added keywords, the bulldozer keyword, for these 3 clips. Taking this a step further as I'm logging and adding keywords, if I scrub down here to some new clips and I see, okay, here are new clips that have dump trucks in them. If I would like to add a keyword for dump trucks, I do not have to go up into my keyword dictionary to be able to add new keywords. I can do that right there from the bin as well. So in this case, I've got my dump truck here. I'm going to mark an in point. I'm going to mark an out point for that piece of the dump truck. And I notice that one passes by. I'm going to mark an out point because that's all of that particular clip that I want from when that dump truck appears to when it has passed by. I'm going to use F1, which is the convert in and out to duration marker. I can go up here under mark and do that, but as you can see here, I have lost my focus here in the source monitor, that particular clip. So when I go and do that, nothing's going to happen, but because I've got that marked to F1, as that's highlighted in my bin, it is showing up in my source monitor. So I hit F1, there's that duration marker. I'm going to hit F2, tab down to enter keywords, and I'm just going to enter a brand new keyword that we have not put in the dictionary yet, which would be dump truck. And I'm going to hit done, and yes, I misspelled that on purpose. I'm going a little bit later in the clip. Here's another dump truck that comes along. I'm going to mark an in point there. And I'm going to scroll down and mark an out point there. Now, when this one comes by, I'm going to go ahead and convert my, hit F1, convert my duration into a new marker, hit F2 to modify, tab down, start to type dump. And I see there, oh crap, I misspelled that. So what do? I'm just going to go ahead and correct the spelling here, dump, T-R-U-C-K. And I'm going to hit done and get out of there. I'm going to go back up to my keyword dictionary. And I can see there now, there are both of those dump trucks. There's my misspelling and my correct spelling. So I can just delete that keyword for the misspelled dump truck. Close that up. Now, if I go back here to this clip, here's my first in and out point that no longer has that keyword associated with it. So how do I remedy this? Well, this is a case where I'm going to have to double click this and load it in the source monitor here. And then I'm going to double click into my marker keyword there, and I can delete that misspelled dump truck, and let's get the one that's spelled correctly. Now, once again, I just messed that up. I did not go down and actually make sure I was selecting the actual keyword that I added. So D-U-M-P. Notice that it is the white text with the black background, which is the highlighted selection as you're doing your keywording. If you make a note of that, you'll have less chance of doing something accidental like I did. So in this case, dump truck is what is highlighted, and I'm using my arrow key now that that is popped up where I can select the one that I want. I'm going to hit dump truck, hit done, go back to my keyword dictionary because I know that my DUM has now been a keyword. So when you add the keyword there in the edit marker pop-up box, that's how you can add them without having to go to the keyword dictionary itself. So now I can go back to my browser here, my bin, and I can just start marking in and out points and adding keywords for my dump trucks. Now, as I finish adding my keywords here for my initial stage of this keywording workflow, I have added one for pickup, as in pickup truck, but I accidentally added the word pick in the midst of adding pickup, so I have to go back and delete that. Is this as easy as Final Cut 10 where you have the ability to assign specific keywords to a keyboard shortcut, such as Command 1, Command 2, Command 3, Command 4, etc.? No, it's not. It's nowhere near as fast. It's not anywhere near as efficient, but we are doing the best we can here with this keywording workflow and how it's currently set up to work in Resolve. Now that I've got this finished, I'll go back to my keyword dictionary and make sure that I would delete anything that I really don't want. In this case, it would probably be the word pickup or the word pick. And I'm going to delete that out. And one reason I like to do lowercase for the keywords that I add, it's because all the built-in Resolve keywords are uppercase. And by keeping them lowercase, it gives me just a quick little visual indicator of the ones in which that I have added myself. I could do something like maybe put a space in front of those to kind of like sort those a little bit better for my custom keywords, but that's something to experiment with at another time. Now with my keywording done, how do we utilize these with some of Resolve's tools? I'm going to go back over here and open back up my bin list. And the way to make use of these keywords is through smart bins. If I right click here and I say add a smart bin, I'm going to add the first one for, let's do pickup, because I know that was one of my last keywords that I worked on. The key here is with media pool properties, and under the second pop-up here, we have a lot of different bits of metadata that Resolve can sort by. But there's one at the bottom called marker keywords, and that's exactly what I was adding were marker keywords, because as we see, if I double click one of my duration markers here, in the marker, the modify marker pop-up, I've got this little space for keyword. And you can add as many of these as you want, not just one, but in this case, I'm using the one to be able to make this work. If I had a, there I did it again. If I had a pickup truck in that shot, I could add more than one keyword for that in the marker here. So with that done, I'm going to right click here again, add smart bin. Let's add one for pickup. I'm going to go under my marker keywords, click that, and my marker keyword contains pickup. I'm going to spell that correctly, P-I-C-K-U-P. Create smart bin. Now I have my brand new smart bin for pickup, but notice I have no media showing up here in my browser. And the reason that is, with this particular workflow, this particular technique with these marker keywords, they will not show when your browser is in a thumbnail view because the markers only show via a list view. So when I click my list view here, suddenly I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 clips that have popped up here, and those were the ones that I actually added my markers to. So if I double click that, you'll see there's my marker with the pickup. Now what you're seeing here is the entire clip because Resolve doesn't yet have a mechanism to just show me only what's between the marker duration. But if I go down here to this clip at the bottom here, this A5500, and I double click where it says marker 2 instead of double clicking the actual master clip, that's going to load it in the source monitor, but yet move my playhead there to the marker duration that had been added there. If I go one above here and I double click the 5497, but on the master clip instead of the actual marker, when I load that up, the playhead's there at the end. Let me just load another one here. I'm going to go back to that one when I double click marker 3, and I load that via clicking the marker icon. It loads and puts the playhead at the top of that particular marker there. So if I want more smart bins for each of those different keywords I had set up, well, I can make note of what those keywords were. I got one for bulldozer. I've got one for dump truck. So those would be things I would just make a note of while I was doing my edit. Let's go add a smart bin. Let's go with bulldozer. Marker keywords contain bulldozer. Create smart bin. There's that one. And then the other one we had was dump truck. And you have a full complement of things that you can do when you create a smart bin in Resolve. We saw there's a number of options here besides just marker keywords. You can make them from different bits of metadata throughout that Resolve is able to track. You can have it does contains, does not contains, begins, ends with. So there's a lot of ways that you can set up very specific smart bin search terms, as well as adding more than just one particular search parameter. But in this case, we've got our marker keywords that we're searching for, create smart bin, and now I have an option for my dump trucks, as well as what I did for the bulldozer. Taking this a step further, When I'm creating my markers, my duration markers, or my markers with duration, I can actually name the marker and make use of that too. In this case, I might call this a close-up DT for dump truck. I'm going to tab down here and add in my keyword. If I go down to a shot like this here, I'm going to mark my in and out point. I'm going to add a keyword for that with my adding my marker duration. I'm going to call that DT from behind. By adding a name into this first name column, I'm going to be able to get some use out of that as well. I just want to make a note here that, again, I'm marking my in point, out point, using my keyboard shortcut to convert that to a duration marker, hitting modify, and when I hit the modify key, the modify marker, my name box is highlighted ready for me to type a new name. So I'm just going to call this, like this can see driver. These are just things that give me a little bit of an indication of what my actual marker is all about. So after adding a lot more marker names, I'm going to go back over here to my dump truck smart bin. And remember, I'm in my icon thumbnail view. When I go to my smart bin, I'm not going to see any clips at all. I need to go back to my list view. So I've got all the clips here that I've got a dump truck marker keyword that has been assigned to it. Now, if I twirl down these carrots here, I can see those markers. As I go to the bottom ones here, I can see the ones that I actually used a name. I gave the marker a name, such as dump truck from behind or loading 1, 2, and 3. If I double click and load this clip here, you can see there are my 3 different markers that I put into that one particular clip. Now, what I would like to be able to do is to possibly grab all these and twirl down all of those carrots, but I can't seem to find any keyboard combination that's going to let me do that. So now that I've created all of these marker keywords, there's a question is of how best to utilize them in the edit, especially when you've taken the time to actually name them to where they might be something useful. Currently, at least what I've found is the best method is probably just maybe loading each clip or double clicking each clip from the actual marker. So that's going to jump right to the first frame of the marker there. One way I could utilize these keywords and these marker keywords I've created is I could make a new bin here. In this case, I'm going to call it subclips, because what I can do is take the duration marker clips and put them into a new bin. Notice here that if I take time to twirl these carrots down and show my marker keyword ranges that I have added onto my clips, if I go back into another bin, go back to my smart bin, those carrots have twirled back closed. So just make a note of that. They don't seem to close back up when moving between smart bins, but when moving between regular bins back to smart bins, they do seem to close up at this point. Hopefully they'll fix that behavior. But if I go here and I grab these different marker keyword ranges that I have set, I'm going to command click to select more than one at a time. I can drag these marker keyword ranges into this subclip bin. And now when I go back to my subclips bin, I have those options in there as subclips. So now when I bring that up, I only have what was between that marker range. See, there's my my loading 1, my loading 2, my loading 3. So I've now made subclips from those marker ranges, those keyword duration markers that I have been creating through this whole process of keywording in Resolve. Now, what would be doubly nice is if instead of giving it the name A45784 subclip and then having to twirl down to see my name of loading 3, if the subclip it created would just be that subclip with the name that I gave it. So that would be one level beyond how it currently operates, because that would be a really nice way to be able to make good use of the work I did by naming those marker ranges when I created them. Now that I have created these subclips, when I go back into my smart bin for dump truck, I'm now seeing these subclips there in the smart bin because, of course, this new subclip that has this marker duration has dump truck in the marker keyword. What else you could do? How about making a select sequence? I'm going to make myself a new timeline. I'm going to call this selects, an empty timeline, which I've got loaded here now in the timeline window. If I go back down here into my Smart Bin, let's go to my Smart Bin for pickup. I'm just going to Command click here on the Mac and select these different markers that I had made, these duration markers that I made when I was logging my clips. I'm just going to drag them down here into the timeline. And what I've now made is a selects timeline of just those particular keyword ranges that I made when I marked my duration markers. I could go back here to my bulldozer. And notice these are all called marker 2, 3, marker 2, marker 4, whatever, in Resolve, even though it's giving me just that range in the marker. In this case, I'm going to just check this 5752. There's what I set for my marker duration. When I go back and check that in the timeline, that's all that I got in my selects timeline when I made that particular, these new selects here. If I go back to my dump truck and I go back and I find some of these where I actually had the names, I could just select those, drag those into the timeline as well. Again, it would be nice if there was some way in which I could actually see the name of that subclip, that marker duration subclip, if I'm even using the correct Resolve terminology. If I could see that in the timeline itself, that would be grand. As I say that, if I notice here in the bin, I've got my caret swirled down from my subclip, and I can see the marker that I actually named here that has the duration, the marker duration. I'm going to bring this one up. What I see here is for file name, I'm actually seeing that marker name under the file name column. Now, Resolve has an interesting and a very cool workflow where you can utilize clip names or file names depending on the work that you're doing, utilizing the Show File Name option in the View menu. As I'm just going to go ahead and actually grab these, what we'll be calling marker duration subclips again. I'm going to drop these in the timeline. You can see that I'm getting duplicate frame markers because they're already in there. But I specifically drug these into the timeline from the subclips bin because I want to see what happens if I go under View and I tell Resolve to show file names. My hope was that I would get these file names to show up there in the timeline itself, but it looks like they are not showing up. Oh well, it was a worthwhile thing to try. Perhaps in the future, maybe that will happen. Thanks for watching this video on using marker keywords in Resolve 15. As I go through Resolve, I'm trying to document some interesting new things I'm learning and some interesting workflows that I'm coming across. To learn more about Resolve, I did a webinar. It's on moviola.com for free. It's a two-parter on craft editing in DaVinci Resolve. So just hit moviola.com and you can watch that two-part craft editing in Resolve webinar where I was going through a lot of things I'd been learning, a lot of cool stuff I've been finding in Resolve, and how to do some of the basic editorial stuff in Resolve. And as always, keep an eye on ProVideoCoalition.com because as I'm going through Resolve and I'm starting to work with it more and more for craft editing, I've been trying to figure out how workflows that I'm used to in other NLEs might adapt to Resolve and what new things Resolve has that some of the other NLEs don't have. And with that, happy editing in no matter what NLE you choose.